Imagine walking into a restaurant, expecting to be treated with respect, only to be humiliated by the very person in charge. That's exactly what happened when a black woman, visiting her own restaurant, was insulted by the manager, a man who, unbeknownst to him, was about to make the biggest mistake of his life. In the heat of the moment, the manager's racist comments flew, targeting her simply because of her appearance. Little did he know, the woman he thought was just another patron was, in fact, the owner of the very business he was running. The shock on his face was priceless when he found out. But here's the twist. How would he respond to the consequences of his actions? Would he apologize, or would he dig himself deeper into the hole he had already started to create? And what would the other employees think when they realized the full extent of his behavior? This wasn't just an ordinary day at the restaurant, it became a turning point in a power struggle that no one saw coming. Stay tuned to find out what happens when the tables are turned and the truth comes out in the most unexpected way. What will happen to the manager? Will his career crumble? Or will there be a twist none of us saw coming? Imagine walking into a restaurant, expecting to be treated with respect, only to be humiliated by the very person in charge. That's exactly what happened when a black woman, visiting her own restaurant, was insulted by the manager, a man who, unbeknownst to him, was about to make the biggest mistake of his life. In the heat of the moment, the manager's racist comments flew, targeting her simply because of her appearance. Little did he know, the woman he thought was just another patron was, in fact, the owner of the very business he was running. The shock on his face was priceless when he found out. But here's the twist. How would he respond to the consequences of his actions? Would he apologize, or would he dig himself deeper into the hole he had already started to create? And what would the other employees think when they realized the full extent of his behavior? This wasn't just an ordinary day at the restaurant, it became a turning point in a power struggle that no one saw coming. Stay tuned to find out what happens when the tables are turned and the truth comes out in the most unexpected way. What will happen to the manager? Will his career crumble? Or will there be a twist none of us saw coming? The manager, David, had worked at the restaurant for nearly 3 years, and he thought he had it all figured out. He'd seen all kinds of customers, dealt with difficult situations, and prided himself on being a no-nonsense leader. But today, something about this woman, sitting quietly at a corner table, seemed to get under his skin. Maybe it was the way she was dressed, or maybe he was just in a bad mood after a long shift. Whatever the reason, he chose the wrong moment to voice his unwarranted opinions. He didn't think twice as he made his rude remarks, assuming she wouldn't be anyone important. But little did he know, his casual racism was about to ruin everything he'd worked for. For her part, Lisa, the woman at the table, had been quietly observing. She was no stranger to discrimination, but what shocked her was how openly David had acted. The disrespect was palpable. She'd been running her restaurant for 5 years now, and though it hadn't always been easy, she had built a reputation for making it a welcoming space. This incident, though, threatened to undo all of it. She wanted to confront him right there, but part of her hesitated. She wasn't sure if she was ready for the fallout that would come with exposing the truth. The tension in the air was thick, and neither of them could have predicted how this moment would change everything. As the minutes ticked by, Lisa sat frozen, her mind racing. She was fighting a battle inside herself. On one hand, she felt the need to stand up for herself and everyone who had ever faced the kind of bias David was now openly displaying. On the other hand, she was painfully aware of the power dynamics at play. She owned a restaurant, sure, but David had a certain influence over the staff, some of whom had worked with him for years. What would they think if she made a scene? Would they side with her or feel uncomfortable with the sudden shift in authority? David, oblivious to the fire he had just sparked, kept walking past her table, checking on other patrons, trying to shake off the awkwardness of his earlier words. His comments had been cruel, but he was too arrogant to realize how deeply wrong they were. In his mind, he was still in control, the one who had the experience, the one who had managed to keep this place running smoothly. He hadn't even considered that his job could be at risk. Meanwhile, across the room, a few of the staff members started whispering. They noticed the tension between Lisa and David. No one had ever seen the manager like this before. Casual, unfiltered, almost cocky. But Lisa had always been the one to keep things professional, to maintain a calm, welcoming atmosphere. It was starting to feel like the balance was shifting, and the uncertainty was unsettling. What if the staff found out that Lisa had been the one who built this place from the ground up? What if they saw her in a new light? There was also the looming question: how would Lisa handle this moment of truth? If she confronted David now, it might risk everything. But if she didn't, the silent power struggle would linger. The walls of the restaurant, once a place of comfort, felt like they were closing in around her. As the hours passed, Lisa realized she had to make a decision, one that would change the course of everything. Would she continue to be silent, maintaining the status quo, or would she stand up and show David exactly who she was? What was at stake wasn't just her restaurant, but her integrity. The room was thick with tension, but neither of them knew the full extent of what would happen next. The restaurant grew quieter as the evening wore on. Lisa could feel every set of eyes on her, every whisper that passed through the staff. She had been in control of the restaurant for years, but now it felt like the ground beneath her was shifting. David continued to act as though nothing had happened, walking past her table with a half-hearted greeting, his earlier comments hanging in the air like a dark cloud. But with every casual glance he threw her way, Lisa felt a stronger pull to act, to take back control. At the bar, a couple of employees exchanged nervous glances. Some of them had overheard the exchange and felt uneasy about what they'd seen. The silence in the restaurant grew louder, more oppressive. Even the usual chatter from the kitchen felt distant, as if the entire staff was holding their breath, waiting for something to break the tension. Lisa's thoughts were racing. She had always been calm, collected, the quiet force behind the scenes. But today, David's words had crossed a line. He had humiliated her in front of her own employees, in her own restaurant. The question now was, how far was she willing to go to set things right? Could she still keep the business running smoothly after this? Or had this moment already fractured something that might never be repaired? David, unaware of the storm brewing beneath his feet, grew more relaxed as the night went on. But something in the air had shifted, and he began to notice the uneasy stares of the staff. It was subtle at first, just a few glances here and there, but it was enough to make him question what was going on. Still, he brushed it off, chalking it up to a normal night. Lisa stood up slowly, the decision weighing heavily on her. The tension was unbearable. Every step she took felt like it echoed in the quiet restaurant, and as she approached the bar, her heart pounded in her chest. David saw her coming but didn't react, still oblivious to the storm he was about to face. She could feel the eyes of the staff on her now, and it hit her that this moment, whatever happened next, would define everything. The restaurant had always been a place of inclusivity, a safe haven, but now it felt like a battleground. Lisa had to act, but how? Would she expose David in front of everyone, or would she play her cards carefully, waiting for the perfect moment? Her hands clenched into fists, and she could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on her. The air was thick with anticipation, and time seemed to stretch out, each second dragging as if the world was holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable clash. Just as Lisa was about to confront David, something unexpected happened. The door to the restaurant swung open, and a man in a suit stepped inside, looking around as if searching for someone. He was unfamiliar, and his presence immediately caught the attention of everyone in the room. Lisa paused mid-step, her heart skipping a beat. Was he here for business? Or was there something more? The man locked eyes with Lisa, and a faint recognition flashed across his face. He began walking toward her, his movements deliberate and confident. The tension in the room escalated. Was this someone from her past, a potential investor? Or was it a coincidence that he had appeared just at this moment? David, still unaware of the storm brewing around him, greeted the man with a casual nod. But there was something about his demeanor now that made Lisa uneasy. The man was heading straight for her, and as he approached, he introduced himself as a consultant for the restaurant's financial backers. Lisa's stomach dropped. She hadn't known there was a consultant coming today. She had always kept a tight grip on the business side of things, and suddenly, this stranger's arrival felt like a disruption she wasn't prepared for. "Are you the owner?" he asked, his voice calm, but with an underlying tone that hinted at business pressure. Lisa nodded, still trying to process the situation. Was this why David seemed so confident? Had he known this meeting was coming, and was he playing a bigger game than she realized? The consultant's eyes moved between her and David, sizing up the situation as if he could sense the crackling tension in the air. His gaze lingered on Lisa for a moment longer, and she couldn't shake the feeling that he knew more than he was letting on. This wasn't just a random checkup. There was something deeper at play, and Lisa could feel it creeping up on her like a storm that had yet to break. David, now sensing that something was off, turned to Lisa with a smirk, still unaware of her role as the owner. "What's going on?" he asked, though the question hung in the air more as a challenge than a genuine inquiry. Before Lisa could respond, the consultant cut in, his voice low but firm. "There are some serious concerns we need to address, but I think we'll need to talk privately." His eyes flicked to David, then back to Lisa, leaving the air thick with uncertainty. Lisa's mind raced. Was this part of some larger scheme to take control of her restaurant? Or was David, in his arrogance, playing her into a corner without realizing it? She had a sinking feeling that things were about to spiral in ways she couldn't have predicted, and the stakes were higher than ever before. The weight of the situation pressed heavily on her chest as she realized this wasn't just about David's disrespect anymore. Something much bigger was unfolding. Lisa took a deep breath, her mind spinning. She had no idea who this consultant was or why he had suddenly appeared, but she knew one thing for sure: the moment had arrived. With a steady hand, she turned to David, her voice calm but firm. "David, I think it's time for you to know who I am." The words hung in the air, and for the first time, David's confident demeanor faltered. His smirk faded, replaced by confusion, as he looked between Lisa and the consultant. Lisa didn't waste another second. "I own this restaurant," she said plainly, watching as the realization slowly sank in. David's face turned pale. He stammered, trying to find words, but they didn't come. The room fell silent, save for the sound of his rapid breathing. The consultant stood back, his expression unreadable, as Lisa took a step forward. "You've been disrespectful, unprofessional, and frankly embarrassing. And now you've put my business at risk." Her voice was unwavering as she continued, "I've worked too hard to build this place, and I won't let you ruin it with your ignorance." David opened his mouth, likely to apologize, but before he could, the consultant spoke up, cutting him off. "Actually, I'm here for more than just a checkup," he said, his tone colder now. "The investors have been reviewing the restaurant's performance, and I'm afraid we've had some concerns. Given the recent staff turnover and customer complaints, they were considering a major restructuring." Lisa's heart dropped. Was her restaurant truly in danger? She had poured everything into this place, and now it seemed like the very thing she'd worked for was crumbling. But as she looked at the consultant, something clicked. He wasn't just here to point out flaws. He was here to decide the restaurant's future. And now, with the truth out in the open, the decision was hers.